The meeting had been completed by Lyria. Today, she officially introduced herself as the new leader of Chester Construxy. Some of the company's branch officers had known about the change of leader, and also the internal problems within the Chester family, who were the founders of Chester Construxy. Only they did not expect that their new leader was the nephew of the old leader. What was even more surprising was that Lyria Valeda was the largest shareholder in Chester Construxy at the moment. They wondered where Lyria got all those shares so that she could enter the board of directors and become the new leader of the company. They all wondered who the person was who supported Lyria, so that the woman who had nothing could own 60% of Chester Construxy. Lyria had gone to her room. She looked at the decoration of the room that was no different from her room at the headquarters. Axelsev had really done everything well. The man had even thought about his room at the branch office in the capital. Lyria took out her mobile phone. She was going to check the work of the small object she had put in Ralene's coat pocket. Lyria had really prepared everything thoroughly before she came to the capital. Lyria's face became ice cold when she heard the conversation between Beleza and Ralene. As Harvey's investigation showed, Beleza was indeed the one behind the accident that happened to her mother and father. The more Lyria listened to the tape, the more her heart chilled. After failing to kill her mother, this time Beleza wants to kill her mother again and herself. Lyria had to say that Beleza was a very greedy woman. She would do everything possible to get rid of people who got in her way. After listening to Beleza and Ralene's conversation, she listened to Ralene and Claude's conversation. So apparently that's how Beleza and Ralene framed her mother so that her mother would look like a bad woman in her grandfather's eye. Lyria smiled horribly.
Beleza, Ralene, Claude, I will definitely make you cry blood after this.
With the footage in her hand, Lyria could already reveal to her grandfather what the three women in his residence looked like, but she wouldn't do it so easily. She would play around with the three women first, and only then would she throw the evil women into prison. Lyria now thought of another name mentioned in the recording. Maxton. Wasn't that man her grandfather's personal assistant? Before going to the capital, Lyria had first learned about the Stanley family and who was closely related to the family. Axelsev had given her that important summary so that she could know who Maxton was. So, her grandfather's assistant was working with Beleza. Now everything made sense to Lyria. This was the reason why her grandfather had never been able to find her mother. While Beleza had been able to find her quickly, it must be because Maxton, who was ordered by her grandfather, betrayed her grandfather. Instead of telling his grandfather, Maxton told Beleza, so that Beleza could send a hitman to kill his mother. This Maxton Lyria would never let go of either. Lyria sent the footage she got to Axelsev. She wanted him to know what really happened to her mother. After a while, Lyria's mobile rang. It was a call from Axelsev.
Yes, Axel. How are you going to deal with those two women?
I want to expose their real faces quickly. I'll use this footage at the end. Those two women really have a lot of guts. They didn't even hesitate to touch my woman.
Axelsev's voice sounded so cold. If he didn't want his wife to grow stronger by solving her own problems, he would have already sent people to make Beleza and Ralene's lives miserable.
Husband, organize your men to hide so that it looks like there is no guard at all. I'm sure Beleza will soon send Maxton to kill mother.
Lyria was taking a risk. She had to let her grandfather see for himself how his personal assistant betrayed him.
I will do as you wished.
Axelsev followed Lyria's plan. He was very proud of his wife for being so ingenious. Instead of relaxing the guard, Axelsev would increase the guard around Lyria's mother and Lyria. But he would do it according to Lyria's wishes, in secret. Today, he had to order people to install surveillance cameras as well as sensors that could detect someone's arrival, so the guards would know if anyone was coming. In addition, he would arrange the guards to be next to Lyria's mother's room, so they could arrive within seconds to minimize the risk.
Axel, for the next few days, I will be staying at Grandpa's residence.
Honey, are you gonna let your husband sleep alone?
Husband, this is only temporary.
All right, I understand. At most, I will come to you if I miss you.
Axelsev would support anything his wife wanted to do. The door to the room opened. Lyria looked towards the door. Sylvian stepped up to her.
Madam, Mr. Malvis wishes to see you.
Let him in.
Yes, mistress.
Lyria returned to the phone.
Husband, Grandpa is coming. I'm hanging up the call.
Okay, bye, darling. I miss you so much.
I miss you too.
Lyria then disconnected the phone call. At the same time, her grandfather now stepped into the room. There was also Maxton, who followed Malvis. Lyria was now facing the man who was going to kill her. She was very curious what Maxton and Beleza's relationship was. Was it possible that they had an affair? It seemed like this Maxton was not picky. Old women like Beleza, even he devoured.
Grandpa, what brings you to my office?
Asked Lyria.
Lyria, Grandpa needs to talk to you.
You can talk to me, but unauthorized people don't need to be here.
Lyria was referring to Maxton.
Lyria, let me introduce you to my personal assistant.
Malvis wanted Lyria to have a good relationship with Maxton, because Maxton would be the one to guide Lyria if he passed on the company to Lyria.
This is Maxton Diaz, Grandpa's personal assistant.
Maxton Diaz? I will remember this name well.
Lyria looked at Maxton coldly. Maxton felt that Lyria was really arrogant, but still, he had to greet the young lady in front of him.
I am Maxton Diaz. Pleased to meet you, Miss Lyria.
Lyria snorted, her demeanor completely full of resistance.
Mr. Maxton, you can get out of here.
Malvis gestured for Maxton to leave. Then Maxton respectfully backed away and exited Lyria's room.
What did you want to talk about?
Lyria went to the sofa.
Have a seat, Grandpa.
Lyria, you are Grandpa's granddaughter. I want you to stay with me.
Grandpa, I've already said that I'm Axel Zev Leander's current wife. My husband owns the house.
You will talk to Axel Zev about this. We just got together. I want to spend more time with you.
If Axel allows it, then I'll stay with you for a while. But if he doesn't, then I can't do anything.
I understand.
Malvis replied.
Is that all you wanted to talk to me about?
Lyria, I want to apologize to you for finding your mother so late.
Grandpa, it's not me you should apologize to. The person you let down was Mum, not me.
Lyria replied simply. She didn't need her grandfather's apology because this man had not wronged her, but rather her mother. Malvis had apologized many times to his daughter, but unfortunately, she could not reply at all. That was her punishment. Her daughter really didn't want to talk to her anymore.
You did it, but Mum won't answer you. My mum still harbors her anger to this day. If I were Mum, I'd do the same thing. My father trusts others more than his own daughter. Grandfather, I really wonder, do you not recognize your own daughter's behavior? Would she be someone so evil that she would poison others, or is your daughter a violent woman who would beat up others for no reason?
Lyria's words left Malvis speechless for a moment.
Did your mother tell you this?
No, Aunt Freya told me.
So, you've met Freya?
Yes. Father's personal assistant took me to Aunt Freya.
Lyria, at that time the evidence was inside your mother's personal effects storage.
What if Madame Beleza poisoned herself on purpose and Madame Merlin placed a vial of poison in Mother's safe deposit box?
Merlin does not know the password to your mother's safe deposit box, Lyria.
Grandfather, the password used by Mother was too easy to guess. It was Grandmother's date of birth, so of course Mrs. Merlin could have guessed it easily.
Lyria wanted to make her grandfather doubt Beleza and Raleen. Malvis was silent again. He knew what Lyria said was quite plausible, but he could not believe it based on speculation.
Mrs. Beleza and Mrs. Raleen are very greedy. In order to get Mum out of the house and control all of Grandpa's wealth, they did not hesitate to harm themselves.
Lyria added.
Grandson, you don't know your grandmother and aunt. They couldn't possibly have such thoughts.
My mum is really sorry. His father can defend others like this, but towards himself, his father doesn't even trust him.
Malvis felt all wrong now. He didn't know what else to say.
Forget it, Grandpa. I don't want to argue with you on the first day we met. If you don't have anything more to say to me, then you can leave. I still have work to do.
Lyria once again felt tired of talking to Malvis. Her grandfather had fallen for Beleza, and Raleen charade too many times to know that he had been deceived all along.
All right, Grandpa will leave now.
Malvis was already quite tired today. Seeing his daughter in a vegetative state broke his heart deeply.
I won't take Grandpa then.
Lyria stood up. She returned to her seat. Malvis looked at Lyria, who was being cold to him. They did take quite a long time to get used to each other and become closer.
Mr. Malvis, why did you want to see me?
Axel Sev looked at Malvis, who was sitting in front of him.
I want Lyria to stay with me for some time. Why should I allow her to stay in your residence? It's like, my parents' residence obviously has everything.
Axel, Lyria is my granddaughter.
Oh what? Lyria is my wife.
I want to spend more time with her. We just met.
Axel, how could I let my wife stay in the tiger's den?
No one will hurt Lyria.
You couldn't even protect your own daughter to be hurt by her stepmother and stepsisters, and you say that no one will hurt Lyria?
Axel, Beleza, and Raline will not hurt Lyria.
Mr. Malvis confirmed that I will flatten the Stanley family if my wife gets hurt even a little.
He looked at Malvis intently.
Mr. Malvis, I will send you a little story about your daughter and grandson. Perhaps it will let you know a little about your children and grandchildren.
He had not had time to find out about his daughter and granddaughter's lives in other cities. He had not thought about this before.
Besides, I've already married Lyria, so I don't need your blessing at all.
He had a fairly good relationship with Axel Sev's grandfather. He also admired Axel Sev for all the achievements he had and how he grew Lander's company to this position, but he did not expect that Axel Sev would disrespect him like this.
I made sure that Lyria won't be hurt in the slightest. Let her stay in my residence for some time.
I can let Lyria stay in your residence, but make sure your orphan child don't touch a single strand of my wife's hair.
I'll make sure of it.
Then he stood up and left Axel Sev's room. Elsewhere, by this time, the person ordered by Sylvian to break Amanda's fingers had done his job well. An accident occurred when Amanda was at an event. There was a commotion there that made Amanda fall and her hand was stepped on by several people. Now Amanda was rushed to the hospital for treatment. She immediately went to the hospital after hearing that Amanda had an accident. When she arrived, the doctor had finished treating Amanda. Explained that some of Amanda's fingers were broken, and there were also bruises on Amanda's face.
Miss Amanda will not be able to play the piano for the next few months.
Charlotte felt sad for Amanda, but luckily Amanda didn't have to bury her dreams. Her finger would heal over the next few months. Amanda just needed to rest and do therapy, and after that, everything would be back to normal. He was satisfied with the work of his subordinates. Amanda got her comeuppance. She hurt his precious wife's hand, so he had to hurt hers too. He picked Lyria up at his company and would drive her directly to her grandfather's residence.
Darling.
He pulled Lyria into his arms when she reached the car park.
Husband, we are currently outside. What if it's seen by others?
What's wrong with being seen by others? I am hugging my own wife.
He replied lightly and tightened his embrace.
I really missed you.
Axel? We've only been apart for a few hours.
I feel like we've been apart for days.
She rolled her eyes.
All right, let's get in the car. That's right. Sai, I can do more than just hug.
You pervert?
Honey, don't blame me. You're too attractive. When I'm around you, I just want to hug you, kiss you, be on top of you, fondling you.
Her face flushed red at Axel Sev's vulgar words.
Shut your mouth and get in the car.
He chuckled amusedly. His wife looked so adorable when blushing like this.
Yes, wife.
He got into the car after Lyria got in. Sylvian immediately drove the car. Naturally, when Sylvian was around Axel Sev, then Axel Sev's driver would step aside and let Sylvian drive the car. Sylvian did almost everything for Axel Sev, perhaps it was only the bed that the man could not do.
Honey, your grandfather came to me a few hours ago.
I knew that. I told him that as long as you allow me to stay with him, then I will leave.
My wife is really obedient.
Axel Sev sneered at his wife. Earlier, she had, without asking his permission, first decided to stay at the Stanley family residence. Then afterwards, she told her grandfather that she could stay there if he allowed it. This little wife of his was really something.
Husband, I will definitely compensate you later.
Lyria had a soft voice. She knew that her husband was aggrieved by her temporary stay at her grandfather's residence, but she was also experiencing the same thing. She had grown accustomed to Axel Sev's warm and comforting embrace. Her nights at her grandfather's residence were bound to be very cold.
Compensation?
Axel Sev raised one eyebrow.
I look forward to that compensation then.
Lyria raised her face. She then gave him a deep kiss. After the saliva exchange, Lyria broke the kiss. Her lips became very wet and slightly swollen.
This is a little compensation from me.
Axelsev smiled amusedly.
Like my wife really knows how to compensate.
Sylvian, who was driving, turned her ears down. The man knew that ever since his boss found the woman he loved, that his life would be treated to things like this. A few minutes later, Axelsev's car arrived at Axelsev's parents' residence. Lyria was going to her grandfather's residence at dinner time. It would be nice to interrupt the family dinner with her arrival.
Yeah, where's Mom?
Asked Axelsev. It was unusual for his mother not to be home at this hour.
Mom's with Amanda at the hospital.
Alastair replied.
Is Mom going to stay overnight? I don't think she needs to let the other servants look after Amanda.
I heard Amanda's situation is not good enough. She broke her finger. Your mom is there to make Amanda feel calmer.
Alastair explained. This man felt he owed Amanda for saving Axelsev in the past.
All right, then Lyria and I will go to the room.
Alastair only replied with a brief nod.
What happened to Amanda?
Asked Lyria.
She had an accident at an event.
Don't you want to see her?
Is she important enough for me to see her, my dear wife? Aren't you jealous that your husband is seeing another woman?
Why would I be jealous of a woman beneath me? Besides, I'm quite confident that my husband has good taste. If he wants to look for another woman at all, he should look for one that is better than me.
Lyria replied confidently. Axelsev chuckled.
In this world, there will be no one who can compete with you.
So glad my husband knows about it.
Axelsev saw more and more what his wife was like. This woman was definitely not a submissive and cowardly woman who was afraid of others. She was clearly a brave little rebel and very confident. Once inside their room, Axelsev locked his wife against the wall. The man now looked at Lyria, who was staring at him boldly. Axelsev's hand moved to the top of Lyria's head and stroked her hair very gently. This woman, he really wanted to spoil her, love her and cherish her with all his heart.
Darling, I will never go to any woman other than my wife. So don't ever encourage me to go to another woman. Do you understand, husband? I'm just asking. I'm not pushing you to another woman's side. I still want this handsome husband of mine.
Lyria caressed Axelsev's face with her slender fingers. Her gaze was so warm and deep. She would have lost her rationality if she had pushed her husband to another man.
Oh, is there any chance that in the future you won't want me?
There is no possibility. I want my husband by my side forever.
Axelsev was pleased to hear the answer from his wife.
Good then, because I will never let my wife let me go. In this life, Lyria Valeta will belong only to me.
Lyria gently caressed Axelsev's lips.
I will forever be yours.
Axelsev's gaze focused on his wife's lips. The next second, he kissed her. A romantic air then filled their room. Lyria's afternoon ended exhaustingly. She was used by Axelsev the whole time. The atmosphere in the Stanley family dining room became unpleasant after Lyria's arrival. Well, Beleza, Rolene, and Claude restrained themselves from clawing at Lyria's pretty face. Besides Malvis and the three women Lyria had already seen in person, there was also Carlos Walsh, Rolene's husband, the second son of the Walsh family. Malvis stood up from his seat.
I will formally introduce Lyria to you. This is Lyria Valeta, my granddaughter, daughter of Celia Stanley. From today, Lyria will be part of the Stanley family.
Only Carlos was surprised in the room. He had not expected that his father-in-law would find his biological granddaughter. Beleza stood up from her seat. The woman smiled gently.
Grandma didn't welcome you properly before. Welcome to the Stanley family. My grandson. Let Grandma give you a hug.
Lyria immediately dodged when Beleza was about to hug her. She would not put on an act in front of her grandfather. She hated being a hypocritical woman who pretended to accept others when behind would stab mercilessly.
I don't have a grandmother like you. My mother's mother passed away decades ago.
Malvis, who saw Lyria's rejection, felt helpless. If he was harsh on this granddaughter, then maybe he would lose her just like what happened to his daughter. Lyria, do you have to be so rude like that? Claude looked at Lyria unhappily.
My granddaughter, it's okay. Grandmother knows that Lyria must be blaming grandmother for the past events.
Beleza was being generous. She was used to playing this role and it was her speciality.
Sit down.
Malvis asked Beleza to sit down. Beleza held back the displeasure in her heart, as her husband did not reprimand Lyria at all.
Lyria, This is Aunt Raline, and this is your cousin Claude, and that is Uncle Carlos, your aunt's husband.
Malvis introduced the rest of the family.
Your grandfather may be senile, but I don't have any aunts, uncles, and cousins here. My mom is the only daughter, and I am my mom's only daughter.
Lyria told her grandfather calmly. Claude and Raline clenched their fists tightly. The thing they wanted most right now was to tear Lyria's mouth open.
Lyria.
Malvis wanted to reprimand Lyria.
Grandpa, if you want me to stay here with you, then don't force me to accept these people like you did with Mom.
Lyria gave Malvis a stern look. Malvis sighed softly. He was too old to argue with his granddaughter.
All right, take your seats and have dinner with us.
Yes, Grandpa.
Lyria replied. She looked at the chair Carlos was sitting in. It was right next to her grandfather.
Mr. Carlos, I want to sit here. Please sit somewhere else.
Lyria.
Raline gave Lyria an exasperated look.
Is that how Kellia taught you to behave towards people older than you?
Mrs. Raline, what's wrong with me sitting here? Aren't I the only one who is grandfather's descendant? I deserve to sit here more than anyone else.
Lyria was truly sharp-mouthed and merciless.
What are you fussing about? It's just a seat. Carlos, move to another seat.
Malvis let Lyria sit near him. What his granddaughter said was true. She deserved to sit there more than anyone else. Carlos endured the humiliation he had just received. The man immediately moved to another seat. He really didn't know where the eyesore Lyria had come from. Lyria sat quietly. She started eating when her grandfather gave the direction for dinner to begin. There was no talking. The dinner passed very quietly. Only a few people's hearts were unsettled. After dinner was over, Malvis called Lyria into his study. This made Beleza and the others even more unhappy.
Lyria, Grandpa will give you 30% of his shares.
Malvis thought that he was too old now, so he wanted to leave the business to Lyria to manage it.
You will be the major shareholder in the Stanley Group, while 20% of the shares are owned by your mother, Mrs. Beleza, as 5% as well as Mrs. Raline.
If Lyria received 30% of her grandfather's shares, then that meant she would own 50% of the shares. Beleza would probably be angry to death if she knew that her grandfather was giving her all the shares.
In addition, Grandpa will transfer some of Grandpa's property into your name.
Malvis had too much wealth. He would not give it all to Lyria, but more than 80% of his wealth would go to his granddaughter. He had seen what Axelsev had sent him. His daughter and granddaughter had lived a miserable life. They were humiliated and trampled by others for not having money or power. This made Malvis feel even more guilty. The princess and her grandson had gone through a difficult life, especially the grandson. If his grandson hadn't met Axelsev, then his grandson's life would have been even more horrible today. Malvis completely understood why Axelsev was so protective of Lyria. It was because Lyria had suffered a lot before.
In addition, Grandfather will also give you the Stanley family's secret fund.
Malvis said another treasure owned by the Stanley family, the secret fund had been owned by the Stanley descendants for generations. The family's secret fund was located in the basement of the current Stanley residence, and only the Stanley bloodline knew about it. Not even Malvis had told his wife about it. In the basement, there were countless piles of money, and there were also neatly arranged gold bars. It could be said that the Stanley family's emergency fund was really a lot.
Grandpa's lawyer will take care of it soon. In the meantime, Grandpa will take you to the company to introduce you to the board of directors. I will hand over the leadership of the Stanley Group to you.
Grandfather, do you believe I'm capable of doing so?
I believe you are capable. Besides, Maxon would help you.
I don't need that man. Sylvian is more than enough to help me.
Lyria Valeda was reluctant to have a snake by her side. Malvis knew who Sylvian was. He would not doubt Axelsev's personal assistant.
All right, do as you wish. Now come with Grandpa.
Malvis stood up from his seat. The man pulled out a book, then the bookcase rotated. A hallway now visible. Lyria frowned. She didn't expect a secret room in her grandfather's study. Malvis stepped down the stairs behind the man Lyria followed. After reaching a secret room door, Malvis did a retina and fingerprint identification. Then, after that, he still entered a key carried by Malvis. The steel door finally opened. When Lyria went inside there, the woman's eyes opened wide. She had never seen such a huge pile of money, not to mention the piles of gold bars lined up neatly in the center of the room.
This is the secret fund that Grandfather mentioned to you.
Malvis exclaimed.
It is now yours.
Malvis handed it to Lyria. Never would Lyria have imagined that she would inherit this incredible wealth. In the past, her mother and father had to work hard to build their company. But now, without her trying hard, the wealth came to her on its own. Lyria honestly didn't need this much money. But since this was her right then, she would accept it.
I don't know how long I can last, so I want to give it all to you early,
Malvis said again. He was already over 75 years old now, and his health would also sometimes decline. He just wanted to give everything to his bloodline.
Grandpa, you will live longer. You haven't spoken to each other's mothers yet.
Lyria exclaimed. She did not want to talk about death. Although she and Malvis had only just met, she hated being abandoned by her family members again.
You're right, my grandson. I have to wait for your mother to open her eyes first. I haven't got her forgiveness yet.
Mom is not someone who holds a grudge, especially against her own father.
Lyria knew her mother well. She was sure that her mother would definitely forgive her grandfather. Malvis also hoped so, but if her daughter was not vindictive, her daughter knew where to return to. But after more than 20 years, her daughter still did not return. After a few moments of silence, Malvis brought Lyria to set up retinal identification and fingerprints. That way, Lyria could enter this room. Elsewhere, at this time, Carlos Walsh.
That little bitch came to this residence herself,
Raleen replied. Her mood had become very chaotic from this morning.
If that woman comes back, then father-in-law will definitely inherit his entire fortune to that woman.
Carlos Walsh was also a greedy man. He married Raleen because she was the daughter of the Stanley family. By entering this family, he could rise to a higher position. In his family, his father always favored his sister. So he started to approach Raleen and marry her. However, Carlos Walsh is not as simple as he seemed. He married Raleen just for the money. This man can be very cruel to himself. He left the woman he loved in order to marry Raleen. However, even though he married Raleen, he didn't want to have children with her. So he always gave Raleen drugs that eventually damaged her uterus so that she couldn't conceive for the rest of her life. Claude was Carlos Walsh's child with another woman. But Carlos Walsh made it look like Claude was an abandoned child in an orphanage, so he persuaded Raleen to adopt his own daughter. That way, Carlos Walsh would not be taking care of someone else's child, but his own. He couldn't possibly bring up his daughter as a child from his affair with his ex-girlfriend, so he organized a plan like that. If the woman he loved had not died giving birth to Claude, he would have let her take care of Claude. Carlos Walsh wanted to take control of Stanley's fortune, but now the real heir was back. All the effort he had put in for decades would be in vain. His ambition to become the leader of the Stanley Group was now in jeopardy.
Mum won't let Celia and Lyria inherit Dad's estate. Soon both mother and daughter will be dead.
Raleen had always trusted her husband, so she shared everything with him.
Mum is really merciless.
Carlos Walsh exclaimed. He praised his cruel mother-in-law. Now he wouldn't have to get his own hands dirty because his mother-in-law would clean up after him. All the board of directors were present in the meeting room at the Stanley Group. There were also Beleza and Rollin, who are shareholders in the company. Besides them, there were also 4 other people, 3 men and 1 woman.
This is Lyria Valeta, my granddaughter. She will be joining the board of directors starting today in place of her mother, Celia Stanley.
Malvis told the other 4. Lyria became the 2nd largest shareholder in the Stanley Group behind Malvi. After making the announcement, Lyria introduced her to the other shareholders. 15% of the shares were owned by Evander Franklin, who was the son of Lyria's late grandmother's best friend. Evander usually did not attend shareholder meetings because he did not want to see Beleza and Raleen. Evander is quite close friends with Celia. If Celia did not run away, then there is a possibility that Celia will become Evander's wife because their mothers are friends. When Evander saw Lyria, he really seemed to see Celia. Even though he is currently married to the woman he loves and has 3 children, he still won't be able to forget Celia's cheerful and kind figure. Evander was one of those people who did not believe the rumors. He knew clearly what Celia was like. That woman would never have thought of poisoning others, even if she was very angry. Evander thought the same as his mother. They were convinced that Beleza and Raylene had slandered Celia. This is why Evander dislikes Beleza and Raylene so much. The other 10% of the shares are owned by Daisy Lim, the successor to the Lim family. She has a good relationship with Raylene. Avery William and Jeremy Trevor own 5% each, and the remaining 5% is spread across the stock market. The shareholders' meeting went on for quite some time. Lyria listened to several reports about the company. From Chichester Construction, she would now soon be the leader of the Stanley Group, which was many times larger than Chichester Construction. Lyria would let Chichester Construction be managed by people she could trust. Chichester Construxy and the Stanley Group were what rightfully belonged to her, and they were what she inherited from her grandfather. She would not let either of the 2 companies go backwards. After the meeting, Lyria was taken to her grandfather's study, which would later become Lyria's room. In his old age, Malvis should have been spending time relaxing, but since the man had not found his daughter, he was leading the way alone. Malvis couldn't give her position to Raylene because she wasn't his biological daughter, even though he really liked the way Raylene worked, which he thought was quite capable of leading the Stanley Group. Malvis could only give Raylene the position of his deputy so she could help him do things.
My granddaughter, these are the things you have to learn. If you don't understand, you can ask Grandpa or Sylvian. For the time being, your room is next to Grandfather's.
Malvis had deliberately asked his workers to renovate the next room so that it would be a comfortable workspace for Lyria while she was still learning to manage her business.
Yes, Grandpa?
After this, Grandpa will take you to a meeting with the company officials. He will be working with you in the future.
Malvis! Exclaimed. He slowly prepared his grandson to be his successor.
Yes, Grandpa.
All right, now take a look at your room first. If there is anything missing, then you can tell Grandpa.
Yes, Grandpa.
Lyria's room was prepared in one day. Yesterday, Malvis gave the order and the workers started the renovation right away. Lyria went to her temporary workspace. Behind her, Sylvian carried many files that she had to study. Lyria would probably have to stay up late to read all those files for the next few days.
Madam, the meeting is in 2 hours.
I'll keep that in mind,
Lyria replied. The woman then grabbed the file. She began to study it. When there were things she did not understand then, Sylvian would teach her. She really praised Sylvian's ability. This man deserved to be the personal assistant of an Axel Sevliander. He was talented in everything. Lyria's mobile rang. The woman immediately stopped working and looked at her phone.
Estelle? Guess where I am right now?
My dear friend, I don't have time to guess right now,
Lyria said quietly.
You really are no fun?
Estelle exclaimed.
I'm at a branch of your company.
Get the hell out of there. I'm not there. I'm currently at the Stanley Group.
Just like that. All right, I'll be right there then.
Later, we can meet at lunchtime. I have a meeting to attend in a little while.
You've become so busy now. It's very difficult to meet you.
Estelle complained. Her best friend was married. She couldn't leave and return late at night with Lyria. And now her best friend was even busier.
You know that I will always make time for you. It's just that right now I really can't.
I understand. Do your work well. This afternoon, you should treat me to a delicious meal.
As you wish.
I love you so much, Lyria.
Lyria smiled amusedly.
I also love you very much, Estelle.
Sylvian, who heard that, thought that his superior hearing his wife's words like that, he would definitely be very jealous. With his superior's disposition, his wife could only love him. Lyria disconnected the call after that. She refocused on the file in her hand. The woman usually faced sketches of drawings, but now there were many numbers and percentages she was looking at.
Madam, in 5 minutes the meeting will begin.
Sylvian reminded Lyria. Lyria stopped immediately. The woman stood up from her seat.
Let's go out.
She went to her grandfather's room. Together with her grandfather, she went to the meeting room. The woman got another call, this time from Axel Sev.
Honey, what are you doing now?
Axel Zev asked gently.
I'm going to a meeting right now.
Something like that. All right, I'll call you back later. Let's have lunch together after this.
Husband, I'll have lunch with Estelle later. Can we have lunch some other time?
Wife seems to love her best friend more than her own husband.
Husband, be good. I've made a prior appointment with Estelle.
All right. I understand. Don't work too hard. Remember, your husband is Axel Sufleander. Even if you don't work, I can support you.
Lyria chuckled.
My husband is very reliable indeed.
I'll have dinner with you later. No refusals.
Okay.
See you tonight, darling.
See you tonight, husband.
Axel Zev then disconnected the call. Lyria also put away her mobile phone. Malvis, who heard his grandson's conversation, felt very calm. His grandson had found the perfect man. There would be no one more suitable than Axel Zev for Lyria.
It seems like your relationship with Axel is very good.
Malvis exclaimed.
Yes, our relationship is very good.
Lyria replied lightly.
I'm glad you found a husband who can protect you well. You won't have to worry about anything in the future.
Yes, you should be like that. Don't think too much and relax.
Lyria tried to pay a little attention to her grandfather. All right, let's go into the meeting room.
Yes, Grandpa.
Lyria and Estelle arrived at the Night Star restaurant located in the capital. This was their first time coming to the first restaurant opened by Lyria's sister-in-law.
Sister?
Lyria tilted her head when she heard her sister-in-law's voice. The woman's smile appeared on her face when Estella approached her.
LA.
Did you come here for lunch?
Asked Estella with concern.
Yes.
I'll take you to a special room.
Estella exclaimed.
Okay.
Lyria was not about to refuse her sister-in-law's generosity.
Oh, Estella? One moment.
Lyria remembered that she hadn't introduced Estelle to Estella yet.
Yes, sister.
Estella, this is Estelle, my best friend. And Estelle, this is Estella, my sister-in-law.
Lyria introduced both sides.
Ella.
Estella extended her hand in a friendly manner. This woman had a very good temperament. She was gentle and calm.
Estelle.
Estelle accepted Estella's hand in a friendly manner.
I hope we will become good friends in the future.
Yes, I hope so too.
Estelle smiled lightly.
All right, come with me.
Estella then stepped out first. Lyria and Estelle stepped behind Estella. The two were led to a special room that could only be reserved by the Leander family.
Sister Estelle, do you want to order your own food or let me choose the best menu in this restaurant?
Estella asked.
If it's not too much trouble, you choose.
Lyria replied.
All right then.
Estella then spoke to the waitress. She mentioned some of the restaurant's best menus.
Sister Estelle, I can't stay with you longer as I have important work to do. I hope you enjoy the food.
Estella was very busy these days, which was why she would come home very late every day. Lyria had never met Estella during her time in the capital.
It's okay. Big brother understands you are very busy.
Lyria replied gently.
Estelle, this is my business card.
Estella was not playing around with her words about being good friends with Estella.
Ah, yes. Thank you. And this is my business card.
Estelle handed her a business card.
Apparently you're a jewelry designer. I will definitely contact you in the future.
Estella said happily. Almost every woman loved jewelry, and Estella was one of them.
Excuse me.
Estella continued.
Yes.
Lyria and Estelle replied simultaneously.
You have a lovely looking sister-in-law, Lyria.
Estelle said.
Yes, Estella is lovely.
Lyria replied based on her several encounters with Estella. Her sister-in-law treated her well.
Did all the Leander family accept you?
Asked Estelle. She was a little worried about Lyria.
Yes, they all accepted me well.
This Leander family deserves to be a role model.
Estelle felt reassured. Lyria had experienced rejection by her own family, so if she was also rejected by her husband's family, then it would definitely hurt Lyria. Lyria agreed with Estelle's words. Not many wealthy families were like Leander. Most of them would look up to caste, wealth, and position.
By the way, how was your meeting with your grandfather? Did you also meet those two evil women?
Asked Estelle, curiously. I didn't feel anything out of the ordinary, but I'm quite happy that I still have another family besides my mother. I've met Mistress Beleza and Mistress Raylene. As expected, they're both very good at playing charades. Oh, right, there's one more woman in the Stanley family. It's Madame Raylene's daughter, Claude. She's just like her mother and grandmother. Lyria, I'm really worried about you. You're in a nest of snakes right now.
No need to worry, Estelle. I'll always be careful.
Lyria exclaimed.
Oh, right, you need to hear this too.
Lyria switched on the recording on her mobile phone. The look on Estelle's face was really bad after she listened to the contents of the conversation there.
These women are really bad,
Estelle said angrily.
Lyria, you must give this recording to your grandfather immediately so that he will know what his wife and stepdaughter are like.
I will, Estelle, but not now. I still want to see their tricks. Besides, it's no fun to have their crimes exposed just like that.
Lyria replied calmly.
Then you should be more careful. Those cruel women want to kill you.
They won't be able to hurt me, Estelle, they won't.
Lyria had known Beleza and Raylene's intentions, so she had obviously calculated her steps carefully. Axelzev and Lyria had finished their dinner together and were now at the Stanley residence. Axelzev will be staying there tonight. Claude, who knew about this, was very excited. She had the opportunity to flirt with Axelzev tonight. She could not believe that Axelzev was not interested in her at all. An extraordinary man like Axelzev would not be satisfied with just one woman. Lyria went to accompany her grandfather to tea, while Axelzev, the man, was answering phone calls in Lyria's room. He would join Lyria and Malvis once his work was done. 30 minutes later, Axelzev had finished. The man came out of Lyria's room. He walked towards the stairs, but his steps were blocked by Claude, who was currently wearing a thin nightgown.
Mr. Axels.
Claude called out to Axelzev with a flirtatious voice and face. This woman had never had a close relationship with Axelzev, even though she had been friends with Amanda for almost 10 years. Axelzev knew what Claude was going to do. This woman would definitely seduce him again. He hadn't bothered to deal with Claude before, so he had simply ignored this woman, but now that he was Lyria's husband, he had to draw a clear line. Claude looked at Axelzev intently.
Mr. Axelzev, would you like to go see grandfather?
Axelzev frowned.
Out of the way.
Mr. Axelzev, let me take you to Grandpa's place.
Claude pulled up her nightgown so that the top of her chest was even more visible. He really did such a thing to tease Axelzev. Little did she know that Axelzev was not the kind of man who would be easily seduced with just that kind of chest alone. Even if Claude didn't wear any clothes in front of Axelzev, that wouldn't arouse Axelsev's intentions towards Claude either.
I didn't expect the young lady of the Stanley family to be so immoral.
Axelzev began to use his poisonous tongue to hurt others.
Mr. Axel, what are you saying? I only intended to take you to grandfather's place. You might get lost.
Yes, Claude, I'm not interested in you in the slightest. In the future, stop wooing me, because it's disgusting.
Axelzev sharply. His eyes looked so cold there was disgust flashed there.
Mr. Axel, don't be a hypocrite. A man like you must have a big appetite. Come on, I can satisfy you better than Lyria.
Claude moved his hand to touch Axelsev's chest, but Axelzev pulled back slightly.
I have a great appetite. Unfortunately, Miss Claude does not qualify. You are too lowly for me.
Axelzev said mercilessly.
Mr. Axels, you better try me first, then you can judge what I'm like. I can guarantee that my skills are better than Lyria's.
Wow, Claude, I didn't expect you to really be this cheap.
Lyria looked at Claude mockingly. She had climbed the stairs carefully when she saw Claude trying to seduce her husband. Fortunately, she had a loyal husband, so she would not be seduced by a bitch like Claude. She didn't expect that Claude would have such foul intentions towards her husband. So Claude and Amanda's friendship, it was definitely not sincere. Claude, this hypocritical woman, in front of Amanda, she would support Amanda with Axelv, but behind Amanda's back, she seduced Axelv instead. The friendship between the two is truly praiseworthy. Claude's face stiffened when he saw Lyria not far from him. Damn it, why did Lyria finish so soon?
Honey, do you feel dirty?
Asked Lyria.
Oh, no, I don't. He didn't touch me at all,
replied Axelzev. In other words, the dirt Lyria was referring to was Claude's touch. Lyria hugged her spoilt husband in front of Claude.
Bitches these days have become so shameless.
She directed her gaze at Claude.
Fortunately, my husband has good taste. How could I possibly compare to a random woman?
Lyria.
Claude was enraged by Lyria's insult.
Honey, come to our room. I will satisfy you,
Lyria said flirtatiously. She enjoyed making Claude jealous.
Yes, darling. Let's go.
Axelsev grabbed Lyria's body, then carried her like a newlywed. The man carried his wife back to the room and ignored Claude completely.
Fucking whore.
Claude cursed Lyria sharply. He clenched his fists so hard that his manicured nails dug into his palms. He was extremely unhappy with the humiliation he had just received, and was even angrier when he saw how arrogant Lyria was.
Lyria, you're going to die,
growled Claude. The woman in the thin dress without wearing any underwear immediately turned around and went to her room. Inside the room, Lyria and Axelsev were kissing. After a while, the kiss broke.
Husband, what did you see earlier?
Axelsev smiled amusedly.
Nothing interesting, darling.
Is it true?
Are you jealous?
Claude doesn't deserve to make me jealous.
Lyria stroked her husband's face gently. Claude was just like Amanda. He would not be threatened by such a woman. Moreover, she had seen what her husband's rejection was like. Axelsev didn't know if his wife was overconfident or perhaps didn't love him enough that she wasn't jealous of the women who approached him. He wanted to ask his wife if she loved him, but he was afraid that Lyria's answer would not be what he wanted. It was too early to ask that anyway. They were not even married yet. It was okay, there was still plenty of time to make Lyria fall in love with him.
That's right, a woman like that doesn't deserve your jealousy.
Axelsev exclaimed in agreement.
Only you said you would satisfy me. I can't wait now.
Lyria chuckled.
I will definitely keep my word.
She demanded Axelsev onto the bed. Next, only the sound of moans and sighs could be heard, along with the sound of skin colliding. As the night wore on, Maxton slipped into Celia's infirmary. The man was dressed in a doctor's outfit. The guards in the next room were on standby. They saw a light switch on, a sign that someone had entered the ward. Maxton approached the bed. The man raised his hand, moving to touch the IV connected to Celia's body. The man had obtained the drug from Beleza. The drug would make Celia go into heart failure and then die. The method used by Beleza was really neat. She wouldn't make it seem like there was another accident because it would direct suspicion towards her and Raleen. As Maxton was about to inject the medicine into Celia's IV, the cupboard on the wall suddenly shifted. 2 guards were now behind Maxton. Maxton, who was surprised, immediately lowered his hand.
Who are you?
Asked one of the guards.
I'm the doctor on duty tonight. I'm checking on a patient.
Maxton said,
"Take off your mask,"
said another guard. Maxton could not be caught. If he removed his mask, his face would be revealed. The man had to escape immediately. He stepped up to the guards and then attacked the 2 men. For a trained Maxton, he was confident that he could take down the 2 men. But unfortunately, Axelsev sent a capable guard. It took a lot of effort for Maxton to escape. When Maxton managed to take down 2 opponents, he opened the door, but he didn't expect 2 other guards. The man received a kick that made him take a few steps back. Now that there were 4 people surrounding him, how could he possibly escape? That night, Maxton was caught trying to kill Celia. Maxton was completely caught off guard. He didn't expect that everything had been organized from the start. He walked into a trap. The guards immediately contacted Lyria and Axelsev. The 2 were just about to go to bed when the call was made. Lyria went to her grandfather's room.
Grandpa, something happened to Mum.
What is it? What is it?
Grandpa, please calm down. Come with me to the hospital.
Lyria said frantically. Behind Malvis was Beleza, who was listening. The woman was rejoicing now. Her plan must have worked.
Husband, I'll come with you to the hospital.
Beleza exclaimed. Lyria didn't stop the woman. Instead, she pretended to panic. Everyone was going to the hospital now. Even Claude was going there. Only Carlos didn't go because the man was on a business trip. Malvis's heart felt very sick. He had been thinking bad things about his daughter leaving him. No, he couldn't let his daughter go ahead of him. She still wanted to see her daughter open her eyes and talk to her. They all arrived at the hospital. Only Malvis's steps were very heavy, while the others did not feel that way. Lyria stopped her grandfather and the others right in front of her mother's ward door.
Grandpa, stay calm.
Lyria, how can you stay calm if something happens to your mum?
The bad things are behind us, Grandpa.
Lyria replied calmly. She turned her gaze to Beleza.
Someone tried to kill Mum, but the guards arrived in time.
Beleza and Ralene's hearts seemed to stop beating. The joy that both of them felt was gone.
Who would be so cruel as to kill Celia?
Malvis exclaimed angrily.
You can see for yourself. The killer is still inside.
Lyria opened the door. Beleza and Ralene felt like a sledgehammer had hit their heads. Their bodies were now covered in cold sweat. The same thing happened to Claude. He did not expect his grandmother's plan to fail.
Mrs. Beleza, Mrs. Ralene, don't you want to see who tried to kill Mum? You might recognize him,
Lyria exclaimed clearly. Malvis had already entered. He looked at the man currently kneeling on the floor. The man was close to having a heart attack.
Maxton?
Maxton's life was over. The man would definitely end up in prison after this.
Maxton, what are you doing here? Why do you want to kill Celia?
Exclaimed Malvis, devastated. He did not expect at all that Maxton, whom he trusted, would actually kill Celia. Maxton gave Malvis a sharp look.
Why are you still asking, Mr. Malvis? What I did was to take revenge on you. My father was killed for protecting you. I want you to feel the same way, to lose a family member.
Lyria did not expect that Maxton would take responsibility himself. This man was truly loyal towards Beleza. Malvis stared at Maxton in disbelief. He never thought that Maxton would hold a grudge against him since the man's father died protecting him 10 years ago. Maxton's family descended from being the Stanley family's personal assistant, and that had been the case for a long time. That was why, after Maxton's father passed away, Maxton had taken his place. Malvis was very fond of the capable and reliable Maxton. She even treated Maxton as her own family, but who would have thought that the man held so much hatred for her and intended to kill her daughter?
I owe your father my life. I will repay him myself, but you have no right to touch my daughter because I didn't kill your father.
Malvis exclaimed angrily. His daughter didn't even know anything, but Maxton wouldn't even let Celia go. Beleza, Ralene, and Claude were reassured that Maxton had given a good reason. Their position was now safe. It's just unfortunate for Beleza because she lost her confidant, who also often warms her bed. Beleza may be over 70 years old, but her sex drive is still enormous. She would probably be satisfied just by making love to Malvis. Their relationship has been going on since Maxton was Malvis' personal assistant. Beleza's charm as a mature woman cannot be missed by Maxton. In addition, by being with Beleza, Maxton gets many benefits. Now everything must stop because of Maxton's failure.
Malvis, you may not have killed my father, but you got my father killed.
Maxton's gaze looks so full of hatred. This man actually had no grudge against Malvis. He knew that what happened to his father was purely because of his own father's actions, but that was the only reasonable excuse he could use.
Maxton, you really disappoint me. How could you hurt Celia like this?
Beleza finally spoke after watching for a long time.
Stop your nonsense. If you want to kill me, then just kill me.
Exclaimed Maxton.
Call the police immediately.
Exclaimed Malvis. He was not a law-abiding person. Let the law make Maxton pay for what he did.